This third Sunday of Lent is about second chances and transformation, change. Second chances in our lives that we might be transformed. It begins with this burning bush. Now Moses noticed that the burning bush was on fire, but it wasn't being consumed, destroyed by the fire. And that kind of means that God's love, the fire of God's love, doesn't destroy, but it transforms. So the fire is there. And from this burning bush, Moses hears a voice. And the voice calls Moses to a second chance. As you might remember, Moses ran away from Egypt because he had killed an Egyptian and didn't want to face the consequences of that killing. So he took off. And now God's coming back to him. Second chance to send him back to Egypt for the reason for which he was born in the first place, to be a leader of his people. That's his second chance. And that in order to do that, he had to change. He had to change where he was living and what he was doing to do what God wanted him to do. But you might notice that he, like most of us, resists change. If you take a look at chapters 3 and 4 of Exodus, you'll find out that 5 times he kind of told God he didn't want to do it. First time, it was when he called him and he said, Moses' response was, "Who, me? Who am I? You got the wrong guy." And God says, "I'll be with you." So the second objection we hear in today is, well, when I go to them, who am I going to tell them? What name shall I tell them of the God who sent me? And he said, God says, tell them I am who am, Yahweh. I am who am sent you. A little while later, Moses says, well, what if they don't believe me? Yeah, that's it. What if they don't believe me? And God says, I will give you these miraculous actions so that when they happen, then they'll know who sent you. Oh. He says, well, I'm not good at speaking in public. I can barely talk. And God says, I'll tell you what to say. Fifth objection was, send somebody else. And God says, tell you what, I'll send your brother Aaron with you, but you're the main guy. I call you to go. And finally, he went. There was a change, a transformation that needed to happen in him, slow as it was. And he did that to bear some fruit for the people who were caught as slaves in Egypt, to bring them out of slavery and into the land, as we heard, flowing with milk and honey. So, change in him to bear fruit for others. In the gospel, there is kind of a parallel here where the people come up to Jesus and say, you know those folks who were killed by Pilate? And Jesus picks up on that and said, yeah, and those guys, those 18 people were killed by the falling tower. You think that they were killed because they were sinners, that God wiped them out. Well, let me tell you something. If that happened, that's the way that God worked, you all would be dead. Because we're all sinners. Instead, we're called to change, to be transformed into what God has made us to be, and to bear fruit. In order to bring that out, he talks that story about a parable about the fig tree. It says the fig tree was there, and the owner of the orchard says, get it out of here, it's not producing any fruit. It's been there 3 years. And the gardener says, okay, wait a minute. The owner is saying, all it does is soak up fertilizer and water and take up land, and it's not doing any good. The gardener says, oh, wait a minute. Let me work at it a little bit more. Cultivate it a little bit, put some more fertilizer on it, some more water, and maybe it'll bear fruit. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, out. That's what God made us for, to bear fruit. And what we're supposed to be doing, or called to be doing during this season of Lent, is taking on those kind of Lenten practices which make some sense to change us, to transform us into a better person of who we are called to be, according to God's plan for us, and to things that we do that might help us to get there. so that we might be less self-centered and more other-centered, and bear fruit for other people. And so, because most of us are not going to see a burning bush, I've never seen one, we are still called, and usually in ordinary ways, we are called to bear some fruit. So, what does that mean? Bearing some fruit. Let me think. This is the Holy Year of Mercy. I wonder if that has something to do with bearing fruit. Corporal works of mercy. I'll read this for the guys on the sides who can't see it. All right? The first one says, feed the hungry. You might do a Lenten practice of some fasting. And in that fasting, you actually might feel some hunger. And if you do, it might remind us of the millions of people throughout the world. Well, heck, even the people in our local community will go to bed hungry every night. And we might say, okay, I can feed the hungry. I can donate some food through St. Vincent de Paul or Veep, or I give them some money for that. I can do that. I know what it's like to feel hungry, and it's not good. So I will feed the hungry. Give drink to the thirsty, self-evident. Clothe the naked. Maybe somebody for their Lenten practice says, I'm not going to do any impulse shopping. Just going to stop it for Lent. Or if they say, anything I buy during Lent, if I buy one sweater, I'm going to give a sweater that I have away. That's a good Lenten practice. Give it away to those who need clothing. Shelter the homeless. Not many of us are going to invite people into our homes to live, although I know people in the parish who have done that. But we can all make a home for people when they are with us. So they seek us out, because when they are with us, they just might say, when I'm with you, I feel at home. We can all do that. Shelter the homeless. Visit the sick. You know somebody who's sick? You ever been sick? Of course we have. Nice to have somebody around, checking on. Visit the imprisoned. That's not quite so easy anymore, because you have to have a background check and you have to be vetted and all that stuff. So maybe, although some people will do that, and if we need to, maybe it means visiting somebody who's imprisoned in their own homes because they're homebound. Maybe it means visiting someone we might know in a nursing home or retirement center for full care because they're lonely. Maybe it means that. And bury the dead. We've had a lot of funerals here this year. Many of you have been to those funerals. Or you've been to funerals of other loved ones that you know. Show up. Oh, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Then just show up and be there. You had somebody close die, know how much that means. That we might bear fruit. Or the spiritual works of mercy. Admonish the sinner. Without judging the person, we can say that action is not right. You might say something like this. If you're doing drugs or you're getting drunk, I'm not going to be around you, or you're not living in this home. You could say that. Or something else. If someone comes up and says, I got this juicy piece of gossip, and you might say, well, I'm not interested. What do you think, you're better than us? I said, no, that's the point. I don't think I'm better than anybody. That's why I'm not going to gossip. Instruct the ignorant. Some people who just really don't know about our faith and how our faith applies to life and what difference it can make in our interactions with one another. Well, let them know. This is what I believe and why I believe it, and this is the difference it makes. Instruct the ignorant. Counsel the doubtful. Have you ever been around somebody who's kind of doubting right now? It's kind of hard to do. So it's like, well, because it gets close to our own doubts. And say, you know what, if God's a good God, then why is there evil in the world? Say, I don't know. I do know God is a good God. And I don't know why there's evil in the world. But I still believe. I'll sit here with you in that doubt of yours. Comfort the sorrowful. Be there. I'm here with you. Moses says, I can't do this. I'll send somebody with you. We need to be with one another in our mourning. Bear wrongs patiently. You know what's going on politically in the United States? Kind of hard to miss it. One of our prominent politicians in Washington, I won't say who it is, you can fill in your own name. One time I was in the area where he was running for his office. He said something particularly nasty to somebody else. And a commentator said, well, why did you do that? He says, if you throw a pebble at me, I'm throwing a boulder at you. Turn the other cheek works in church, but it doesn't work in the real world. Really? Jesus Christ doesn't work in the real world. Oh, that's the national scene. How about bear wrongs patiently? How about if we don't do an eye for an eye? In other words, what they do to me, I'm going to do to them, and even worse. How about if we bear wrongs patiently? And what difference would that make in our lives and in the lives of the people around us? Forgive, and that moves into forgive all injuries. Forgiveness is not the easiest thing, especially when we are hurt really deeply. But to get on that road is an important thing. I want to forgive. I want to get to that place. I will try to forgive injuries, to pray for the living of the dead. Maybe we're saying, during Lent I want to pray some more. And when we're doing that, it just might come to our mind who it is that needs our prayer, both the living and the dead. That we might bear fruit. You see, this time of Lent is a time of second chances. God says, I'm not going to strike you down. I want you to repent. I want you to change your life. I want you. He wants us to be better people, more loving, made in His own image and likeness. And He wants us to bear fruit. He gives us that chance to bear fruit because there are people who need the fruit that we have, so that they have a better chance at life.